Good afternoon, everyone. Hope everyone's doing well on this lovely day. As Nick said, I'm Janine Yancey. I'm founder and CEO of Emtrain. We're an e-learning and culture analytics company. And we're going to talk a little bit, about 10, 15 minutes, maybe 20, about developing culture skills to thrive into next year and the year after. So a little bit of context about me and my background. So I started my career, first part of my career, as an employment litigator, a workplace investigator, did a lot of litigation. Let me see a show of hands of folks in the session today that are HR business partners or employee relations folks. All right, so we've got a fair sampling here. So people asked our colleagues sitting in session with us today, when we hear about a conflict or a claim, we're usually not surprised. It's like, oh, there's an issue, there's regrettable attrition happening over and over and over ago in so-and-so's team. Yeah. Oh, that person can't keep any people, and there's claims of bullying and this and that. Yeah. All of us that do this work know this, and why do we know this? We know this because we can see from a mile away certain people have skills and certain people have opportunities, to put it that way. So after years of doing litigation for all the big employers, I'm from California in the Bay Area, to the extent that one law and motion judge in Superior Court said, I can't handle any more of these harassment cases and discrimination cases. This is nuts. It's keeping me up. I'm like, you know what? There's got to be a better way. We need to start developing solutions that we're actually solving the problem, not just cleaning up the mess over and over and over again. So let's talk a little bit about human capital metrics, right? Been around for a long time, decades. And it's really like kind of the foundation, if you will, of how we guide our businesses. And human capital metrics basically show us what's happening right now. How many people do we have? What demographics are represented? What's the attrition rate? What's the promotion rate? So on and so forth, right? It's showing us what exists today. It's not showing us what's coming, so that's number one. And it's also not showing us what's happening between people. So we've got 5 generations working together. We've got a multicultural, multiracial workforce, more so than we have had even 5 years ago, certainly way more than 10 years ago. Different communication styles, different conflict resolution styles, like how we approach problem solving is very, very different as informed by our backgrounds, as we all know. And so the social dynamics of people working in teams is harder. And I think we've had some sessions today kind of addressing some of this, right? Now, layer on the pandemic, that's about, 3 years, maybe 4 years of not being together, in close proximity and not spending time developing our personal relationships. So you've got that dynamic that's making it a little bit harder. And so, we need an additional metric to use, which I'm thinking of as our social capital metric. It's measuring our culture skills and how we interact with each other. And as we think about the newest, and we had the pandemic, now we're kind of moving on, yay. But now we have AI. And AI is now rapidly changing skills and the job requirements for each job, right? So job requirements that we had 3-4 years ago are going to start to probably fall away. And our technical skills, our job skills are going to be rapidly changing with the advent of AI and other technology. That all the more puts our culture skills at the top of the list. How do we collaborate? How do we listen? How do we problem solve together? So we've got the culture survey. It's hard to think of a time when we didn't have a culture survey, right? It's like, gosh, what did we all do without a culture survey? And again, I just looked at some of the standard questions. Obviously, they're all different, and some questions might vary. But similar to human capital metrics, these questions are asking about what exists today, what is already baked. How do you feel? Do you feel respected? Do you feel like you belong? Do you feel like your manager helps you? Like the situations it's asking about are what is already materialized, right? And so if you want to change it, it's going to take a sizable level of effort to change the situation, right? So it's giving you a pulse on what's already happened. Now, every other function in the business gives you a pulse on what's happening down the line. Predictive metrics, right? So, somehow it's a little formatting, sorry. But, look at your engineering team, your sales team, your marketing team. They're like, hey, based on what I'm seeing today, here's what we can expect tomorrow, next month, next quarter. And I think our next opportunity in the HR function is to start giving our businesses increasingly predictive metrics, right? Here's what we're going to have in terms of attrition. Here's what we're going to have in terms of inclusion. Here's what we're going to have in terms of employee relations complaints. Based on what I'm seeing today, we're going to have 30 employee relations complaints in Q4. Like, give your businesses predictive metrics, not just counting the here and now, but telling them what's going to happen 2, 3, 4 quarters off. And so how do you do that? Well, in every other function, you need to look at like the single piece of information or data that's going to tell you what the likely outcome is going to be. And so in our context, that looks like culture skills. So these are 16 culture skills that tell the business what's going to happen. They predict outcomes. So we have ethics, respect, inclusion, and belonging. And so if I put on my employment law, employment relations hat, so for those of you who are HR business partners in the room, your respect and your inclusion skills tell you all you need to know about what you're going to experience in employee relations. So as a former litigator, all of my harassment cases, all of my discrimination cases reflected weak skills in managing power, managers who did not understand the implications of their power. They'd invite a direct report to go get coffee. They were not thinking about anything, but the direct report felt uncomfortable, felt awkward, felt like they had to say yes. In-group, out-group dynamics. Groups feeling, ostracized from each other and fighting. Mitigating bias, our ability and our skill to mitigate biases. All of those skills at the individual level, coworker level, team level, and enterprise level, they are all skills that tell you what kind of social dynamics and outcomes you're going to have. So we've been doing e-learning for, training, learning for longer than that, but e-learning probably 20, 25 years. And the first effort of online learning, I would say, is one-dimensional. I call it, just one-directional content, meaning we're going to show you a bunch of information, we're going to hope that it's engaging, and we're going to get your completion certificate. And show in our HCM that you did this thing. We're not going to open up the hood. We're not going to understand what you thought about it or anything like that. It's just all logistics. The next generation of learning is bi-directional. We're going to listen while we learn. So as it relates to culture skills, we're going to basically show you what good looks like. Hey, here's what active listening looks like. And show you, a 30, 40-second situation of what good looks like. And then ask you, hey, do your coworkers, are they skilled at active listening? Strongly yes, strongly no. And get people's perceptions of what they're experiencing in their teams, with their coworkers and their managers. And as you see reflected here, it achieves two things. One, you've got an instructional design technique because people get to see how others think, right? And so as humans, I think we tend to think that everyone thinks the same way we do. So this is a nice, easy way of opening up that lens, letting people kind of pause and reflect, like, oh, I guess I'm not, I'm on the fringe here of a person who thinks this way. Secondly, it gives the organization a view of how people are thinking about the skills of their coworkers, of their managers, of their leaders. And when you do that, so when you get everyone's thoughts about the skills of the people that they work with mapped to those 16 culture skills that I referenced before and showed you, then you get all the employee sentiment data organized, and it's like an HR business partner having a conversation with one or two people on a team, automated and at scale. Right? So like think about the types of information you learn when you actually have a conversation with somebody. You're like, well, how is so-and-so as a manager? How is so-and-so as a teammate? You're getting all that information, but in an automated, scalable way that is organized in a way that you can see, at a glance where your hot spots are, who's got strong skills and who has opportunities for coaching and development and to up-level their skills. And this sits side by side and should sit side by side with your annual culture survey, right? So you see, here's the state of the state as reflected by your annual culture survey. And then this data is predictive of like, okay, who's got skills? Where are they strong? Where are they weak? I can't boil the ocean. No one here can boil the ocean. How do we get data to tell us where we invest our time? So every year, we publish a culture report, taking all of people's responses about the skills of their coworkers and their managers and their leaders, and aggregating it and mapping it to one of these 16 culture skills, right? We just published this year's report. I'd encourage everyone to download the report. I think it tells us a lot for how to prepare for next year. We've got 20 million employee responses about the skills of their teams, as it relates to those 16 culture skills. And at a high level, I've got some good news and some bad news. So at a high level, 20 million responses indicated people have a 4% bump in their experience on respect, inclusion, and belonging, which was a pleasant surprise for me. I was expecting to see actually a decrease, but we saw a slight increase from September of 2023 to September of 2024. Unfortunately, we saw a 5% drop in people's perceptions of the personal integrity and accountability of their leaders. So that was interesting. And as you see in our report, our interpretation of it is basically that this year the folks responding, for the most part, were folks that survived the layoffs, right? Because I think across all industries we had layoffs. And so in a really kind of basic way, the people are saying, I feel respected and I'm included and I belong. Well, like they didn't get voted off the island. So they feel like they belong there, so that's good. And at the same time, because of the pretty drastic business decisions, they're doubting the integrity of their leaders, right? And I think we're seeing that just, I don't know, show of hands, did anyone follow the, the Grub Gate from Meta, that little fiasco a week ago, and then there was a fiasco at Ernst Young. There's starting to be these ethical fiascos that are cropping up week after week, and it's basically employers taking, very strong decisions, as it relates to their employees, making workforce management decisions, and employees doubting the integrity and the legitimacy of those decisions, right? And so that's very consistent with what we're seeing in the report. So employees right now are heavily doubting and distrustful of their leaders. So to kind of wrap this up and think about what we can do next year, again, as we all know, we've got a society that's more polarized than it really has been in decades. We've got, so many different types of people all working side by side. We need to think about honing in and developing the culture skills of everyone, team members, direct managers, leaders, and focusing everyone on developing and measuring those skills, because that's going to be basically the shock absorbers that's going to carry us through navigating through different and uncertain economic times. And in particular, given the lack of distrust that we're seeing present now, low-hanging fruit opportunities to have leaders, lean in and take actions that can build up people's trust reservoirs, in having some confidence and trust in the leadership. With that, thank you so much. Appreciate everyone's time.